I've got the crank out of the Tiger Cub, whose engine I've stripped down, in the lathe between centres just to take some readings, and we've got a rise and fall in excess of 0.05 of an inch, both rising and falling at pretty much the same time, but that's not a brilliant readout. And also I felt a tiny bit of play in the big end, so I want to split the crank and take a look at things. And I've got some spares for big ends for these. I might have something compatible if it needs it. If it's got a roller bearing big end, I wouldn't be quite so alarmed at the small amount of play I felt as if it was a plain one, but I'm going to get in there and have a look. And also I want to get the sludge trap screw undone and check and make sure that's clear, because it would be a shame at this stage. I can always sort out that drive side main bearing by fitting it with a bit of main bearing compound and bearing fitting compound and put everything back together, but I'd like to reassure myself that all is well with this, and if it needs any attention or new components, hopefully I'll be able to sort that out as well. But just as a sort of base setting before I go into it, we've got about 0.07 of an inch on the drive side, and certainly 6 or 7 on the timing side. And the timing side journal is one of those that can be reground to suit the bush. Now, the fit of that journal in the bush didn't feel too bad to me, but when the crank is split, I'll offer up the flywheel, the timing side flywheel on its own, and check again and just make sure that things are all right there. Right, well, as can be seen here, I've got the Tiger Cub crankshaft split now, and it has got a plain big end in it. I've wiped all the surplus and excess oil off the components so they're clean and dry, and we have got play there. Now that in itself is not too bad, but it's probably right on the far end of anything like acceptable, and it's only going to get worse, and the rate that it will get worse at will accelerate as we get more and more play. So I'll probably put a feeler gauge blade in there and check, but I reckon that we're well the other side of 2 or 0.03 of an inch there, which is about as much as you could possibly expect to get away with on a plain big end. I think I've probably got some bits and pieces around, and I'll be able to do better than that. There's also signs already of the crank pin having got hot in places, the discoloration, and you can see it on the eye of the conrod a little as well. So it's not going to get better. We've obviously got a prime opportunity to do something about it, so I'm going to see what I can do and hopefully come up with something better than that. I know I've got quite a few new old stock big end parts up in my boxes in the loft, so I'll have a look and see what I've got, and hopefully we can sort something out here and put a good crank together, and hopefully perhaps even with less run out than we saw before. Well, having split the crank on this Tiger Cub assembly and finding that there was wear in the big end, the worst or most worn component was actually the big end bush in the conrod, and it just so happened that I had a new old stock item to hand, and the crank pin was serviceable. That was okay, so I've literally just swapped the conrod. I've cleaned out the sludge trap and blown through all the oil passageways. They're all clear. I've put the crank back together and trued it as best I can, and rising and falling together now, we've got 0.04 of an inch there and 0.04 of an inch there, and rising and falling together, and I'm taking my readings from the main bearings, or bush in that case, areas. The one will largely cancel the other one out to effectively almost give us 0 really. So we're certainly well down on what we had when I set this crank up between centres to check it before I split it. So I'm pleased with that, and the rebuild can now commence.